In this lesson, we're going to see how to append data to a file. And it's not that much different than writing data to a file. We just have to make a slight change to the constructor when we create our printWriter object. And I'll show you that in just a moment. First thing we need to do, though, is import our classes. So we're going to start with printWriter class. And then we need the FileWriter class as well. We also need the IOException class. And we're also going to use the scanner class because this time we're going to put our input into a loop. And actually that's not the reason why we need the scanner class, but we are going to put our input into a loop this time. So with all the classes that we need imported, we're ready to begin the program. But before I start the program, I want to do one more thing. I'm going to go into grades.txt and remove all but the two original pieces of data that we had in there. So let's save that. And actually, that's maybe okay. I might have left the cursor at the end of a line, and it may put the first item at the end of the second item instead of on a new line. We'll see about that. I'll leave it like it is for now. So the first thing we need to do is create our file name as we've done every time. Now I'm going to show you a variation of that also before this lesson is over. Now we need to set up our printWriter object, which we'll call outFile again. And here's where we have to change up the constructor called the FileWriter a little bit to append to a file, and that's adding a second argument to the FileWriter constructor. By writing true after the file name, of course with a comma, we're saying that we want to open the file for appending. When we left that argument off, we were just saying we want to create a new file for output. And every time we called that constructor, whether grades.txt was already there or not, it created a new file. It would just delete the old file and start a new one. But we don't want that to happen now. We want to append to an existing file. So we have to add true to this constructor so that the file won't be deleted and then created anew. Now we also need a scanner object because we're going to get input from the user this time. So we have a scanner object called input. Create a variable grade, initialize it to 0. I'll explain why in a moment. Then prompt the user to enter a grade, -1 to quit. In general, you can't have a -1 grade, so that makes a good value to look for in a loop to stop your program. Get the input from the user, like so. Now we'll start the loop. While the value of grade is not equal to -1, write out the grade, outFile.println, just like we did before, and then prompt the user again and get the input. So we're just going to copy these two lines, close the body of the loop, and then finally, so that our data will be written to the file, we close the file. And that should be everything that we need. So let's save the program, and we'll compile it, and then run it. So we'll enter some even grades. We'll enter 79, 83, 90, 100, and then let's quit. So we'll enter -1. And then we can confirm our grades are there by typing the file. And yes, indeed, I forgot to move the cursor down to the next line, so we have a little problem, which we could easily fix just by going into Notepad and separating the 79 from the 77. But I'll just leave that as it is, no problem. So appending to a file is very similar to writing to a file. You just have to change the constructor call and add this second argument true. And then we put our input and output into a loop so that we could add as many grades as we wanted to, which, is why we have looping in the first place. So that wraps up this discussion of appending to a file. Now we're going to look at a different type of reading and writing where we work with characters at a time instead of lines at a time. And we'll start out in the next lesson by looking at how to write out characters to a file.